Trusty cold beverage. Yeah, we're live. I realize already. You guys can make comments. I will fix it before the end of this and before this airs. Although the live people can probably see it. The thumbnail is upside down. I realize that. I'm fixing that as we speak. But tonight we want to talk about the video I'm working on right now is the flywheel. Steel flywheel and steel drive plate versus flex plate and aluminum drive plate. So it's a huge change in moment of inertia. It's a huge change just basically in weight. Even if you just look at it like that and didn't understand that, there's force required to accelerate a given mass and didn't get into the math, which is very simple. But even if you didn't look at that, if we change the flywheel weight of that drive assembly from 45 pounds to 16 pounds, obviously good things are going to happen. I mean, the very least of which, if you did nothing else, you'd get almost 30 pounds of weight off of your car. So that's better. And the fact that you have to accelerate it constantly, if you're road racing or drag racing or whatever, it's definitely beneficial, and you'll get to see that. That's what that video is all about. But tonight we want to talk about intercooling. So here's my question, and this will be our poll for tonight. So we're going to get our poll up right away. So the poll is, if I add an air to water intercooler to the M90 Supercharged 4.8 liter, no other changes, will it add power? So if I add an air-to-water intercooler, like a sandwiched one underneath the blower, like you do with these typical, positive displacement deals, Tom DeMuse has one that we probably are going to run. If I make no other changes to it, no speeding the blower up, no timing, no air. I mean, we keep the timing the same, keep the airfield the same, all that stuff. We're running 85. We're running 8 pounds of boost. Those are important considerations when you're talking about air-water intercoolers. We already have cooling, the fuel cooling. We don't have very much boost. We have it blowing into the high ram. Maybe that makes a difference. Maybe that doesn't. We have a very small camshaft in this. Let me know what you guys think. The video that I'm working on right after that I post this one, because this one's almost done, on the one on the flywheel assembly, is a comparison between the 4.8 and the 3800 run with the same pulley, although not necessarily exactly the same blower speed, because one of the crank pulley is a little bit different, and we ran to a different RPM. The question being that on the 3800, we had a bigger camshaft, head flow probably not as good, shorter runner intake than the 4.8 is, same blower, same throttle body, same throttle opening, and not quite as much blower speed, much higher boost level because we were making less NA power on the V6 because it only has 6 holes to do it in, whereas on the 8-cylinder we have 8. So let me know what you think. We'll talk about that probably tomorrow, but why is that? Why is it we have shorter runners? We have more camshaft, less head flow, same blower, same throttle opening. Why aren't we making exactly the same power? It's kind of close, but it'll be an interesting comparison. Is it the number of cylinders? What is all that stuff? But if I add an air-to-water intercooler to the M90 Supercharged 4.8 with no other changes, will it add power? We'll go ahead and get that up and see what you guys think. The flywheel thing is cool. I'm hoping people will like that video. It's interesting stuff. I have a little bit of math in there on I used your bare bones simplified version of formula for moment of inertia. There are a number of them depending on what you're actually trying to look at. I tried to simplify it so people would understand it. And basically we're looking at the power difference, and it is pretty cool. And admittedly, I kind of in this video went to, we did an extreme thing because you want to see some kind of change. So if I just did tiny incremental changes, well, we went from a 15-pound flywheel to a 14-pound flywheel and then tried to measure it. Honestly, in my opinion, that's a waste of time. If you're going to change something, change something. Let's see what's going to happen. Let's try a big thing. Let's try a big swing And then if that does something, then we can start looking at the microscopic stuff. So let me know what you guys think on the poll. We're in the 90 percentile right now. But it pulled you off of Eric's video? Man, that's the kind of pull I have. That's right. Just got my notice 10 minutes late. I haven't even been on for 10 minutes. I've only been on for 5 minutes. So you're really not late. Just came across one of those M90 intercoolers on my local Craigslist. I should buy it before the holder tax kicks in. Yeah, I don't see too many of the intercoolers there, but the one that we're putting on there is actually the one that we ran before, where we ran the Ford blower on there. But this is from Tom DeMuse, and it bolts onto, because it has the bolt pattern on his lower flange, to bolt it to a Holley high ramp. And then so we just need to mount the blower to the top of that, and it'll work. So what I'm wondering is, if we just did that, if we took the motor and ran it the way that I ran it before, where it made 480 something horsepower at like 8 pounds of boost, and we add the intercooler, is the intercooler going to do anything? Because we know there's got to be some kind of restriction on the intercooler. There is on every intercooler. So we don't, the problem with the little M90 blowers, we don't have a whole bunch of excess flow to be giving up. So we want to give up as little as possible. And the other thing is we have E85. So do we get as big a gain if we bring the temperature down? Since we're only running 8 pounds, is it really that hot, even though we're spinning the blower pretty fast? You know, we're setting ourselves up, in my opinion, for a situation where the gains are not going to be as big as they otherwise could be. You know, if you run an air-to-water intercooler on a blower that's making 15 pounds and you have 250-degree charge temperatures, let's say, and you cool those off a lot, then good things can happen. But what if you only have 100-degree or 150-degree charge temperatures? You already have the 85. You know, it's not that hot, and you're adding an intercooler. You know, what are you going to do? Drop it another 50 or something, depending on, you're not going to use ice water, because we wouldn't want to do that. That's another test we could do, which would be interesting. But I just don't know if we have enough blower, if enough inlet air temp to kind of really take advantage of what an intercooler can help with. Dean, what's up? Dino. Still got to test the chili bomb. Yeah, the chili bomb will be on something smaller, but yeah, definitely. I emailed so many companies today trying to find some cams. Someone will be crazy enough. There you go. Turbo Centra, did you talk to the guys at Schneider Cams? I voted yes without knowing the poll. There you go. That's what we like. Positive, the power of positive thinking. Let's see. Anyone know if anybody is still producing tubular headers for the LS4 platform? Does the W Body King or whatever, do they have any of those over there? Dean, you won again already, 100%. Did you take a photo of it? A screenshot? It's making me miss my GTP. There's a Lemons race car that had a pair of M90s. That's good stuff. Couldn't see the poll when it came up. Flywheel weight does make a difference, by the way. It did in this test, not surprisingly. 2 M90s on the 408. That is planned. It's Saturday. Where's the pizza at? Actually, Tim, I had pizza tonight. I had 7-Eleven pizza. I think it was 7-Eleven. Yeah, either Little Caesars or 7-Eleven. Poll's broken for you? Eric from I Do Cars. I like the I Do Cars, guys. That's cool stuff. It has to help if it has some airflow. Yeah, the one that we used before was enough. I mean, we were running 15 pounds with that Ford blower on the LS motor. So, and it dropped the temperature a pretty good bit. Cooler air is more dense, so it's going to make power. Illogical, I know, but we're going to win it this time. In the dyno cell, it probably won't add power unless it has a good strong air across the core. This is an air-to-water intercooler. Got my apartment today, found lower control arm bushings. Man, you got all the good stuff. How would an M90 compare to a 142 or 144? Is a M90, I don't think an M90 makes that much, makes as much power. I can't remember trying to turn a 144 all the way up. I think we made up near 700, but I think that was a 174. Air cooling helps air charge to be more dense, so more oxygen, nitrogen molecules. Just so that there's more. Okay. Took my Cutlass out the other day to let some smoke out of the tires. Got home and smelled the burning smell. Couldn't find any problems. So I checked the oil. It's milkshake. Oh, man. Does your milkshake bring all the pistons to the yard? I'd like to see compound M90s as well. Parallel, all the heat, but it could be cool. Parallel is different than compound. So which one do you want to see? You want to see two of them in series or in parallel? If you have one blowing into the other, that's not a good idea. If you have two of them together, both blowing into the motor, that's a good idea. That's what we'll do. A positive displacement blower is going to force a fixed amount of air into the intercooler, which would lower the boost and unload the drive load, so it would definitely pick up power. So you think from reducing the boost is how it's going to pick up power that's going to have less power consumption? I did receive a razor blade rebuild a couple months ago, so so it really hurts. Oh, usually those are foolproof. When DoD lifters fail, do they just stop moving the valve? Does anybody know? I know I've never had a failure on one of them. One blowing into the other on a small motor. I think you're right. You're going to have all the heat, right? That's why I wouldn't do it. I would rather have more airflow. I think you're going to limit yourself in airflow that way too. Diesel-like power. Somebody was telling me, I saw a post today about, somebody was talking about water methanol helping these roots blowers because it helps seal up the distance between the rotor and the housing. And so it makes the blower more efficient. Valve will open a time or two, then stay closed, then stays closed. So is the plunger sticking at the bottom on the lifter then? At what pressure do you think the efficiency of the M90 takes? A roots blower is not very good for high pressure ratios. So we've run them at, I'm sure we've run them up near 13 pounds or so. I think on that 3800, I'm thinking that we were up near that boost level. And I don't think that that's a good idea. I don't recommend that. I'd much rather run it where we're running it on the V8 where it's like 8 pounds because we have a better motor. Let's see. Yeah, we were actually up over 14 pounds. So that's pretty high. And it's pretty high, and it's also not making a lot of power. So that Let's see. Let's see on our high-powered ones. So that's 400. That's 12 pounds. I'm trying to find out where our big power one is. Nope, that's not it. Nope, 380. Got lots of low power things here. It's sure easy to make the power with the turbo instead of the supercharger. It makes life a lot easier. Lots of NA mods. So where's that at? What boost level is that at? Yeah, we're definitely running more boost, but I don't think you should be there. They're really good at 7 pounds, 7 or 8 pounds. What's the current status of the Pontiac 4-cylinder? It's ready to run. It's been rebuilt. It's been painted. It looks nice. It's ready to go. Razor blade rebuild. Is that like an aerosol overhaul? It is. It's like the Krylon rebuild. Have you ever done the L78, redone the L78? I tried running it again, but had another problem. But it will go back up. It'll go back up this month. Supposedly the air charge temps on the Ford M90. The Ford M90 is a different blower housing, but they also, on the factory version, ran an air-to-air intercooler on it. So it could theoretically be better than the M90 on the 3800. James Bond, just watched the GT45 versus S475. Great video, clear explanation. With the same setup, make 1,000 horsepower with 2 GT45s. Two GT45s could support like 1,500 horsepower. So it would easily make 1,000 with 2 GT45s. Tyler, supposedly the air charge temp reached 350 on what application was that? Scrolling back. I found that EGR crud stuck to the rotors help make more power. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Anything that takes up that space there that's why they put the coating on there. But did you pick the 4.8 for the M90 because the 5.3 wouldn't show boost because the M90 doesn't support it enough? Well, the 5.3, the way that it's configured right now, makes 540 horsepower NA. And it also runs to 7,700 RPM. So it's not really a good choice for the M90. Currently bought a 250 4.853. Needed help to build 607 horsepower on a budget with a carb setup. Needed help and advice. First time ever doing things, but trying to get into building engines. So which one do you have? Do you have a 4.8 or a 5.3? And if you're trying to do 600 or 700 horsepower on a budget, you can't do that NA. You can do that with some kind of power adder. Boost is the easiest way, and a turbo is the cheapest way. You could also maybe do it with nitrous and a cam and springs. Upside down letterbox inlet with over 6 square inches of area into an open plenum. The Ford Supercharger 3800 is very different in design to the GM 3800. Yes. Do those two, don't they share the same rotor pack though? Don't they share the same Eaton rotor pack? I mean, I guess we could put that blower assembly. And is that blower assembly is it more comparable to the Gen 5 blower, or is it more comparable to the Gen 3 blower? Will going to a 3-inch pipe help with heat? What heat are you talking about? Are you talking about engine compartment heat? It's not going to stop the turbo from making lots and lots of heat. It could help with heat if you're creating extra heat on top of what a turbo does already by design. If you're adding extra heat because you're restricting the flow of the exhaust out of the turbo and building back pressure, then yes. But the amount that you're changing it, let's say that you changed it at 100 degrees out of 1400, it's still seriously hot. Same inside the M90, but the way it flows into the manifold is different. Yep, because my granddad built engines, but I never was able to learn due to his passing, and I want to do it with a turbo and a carb on my Cutlass. Okay. You can do it with I have carbureted turbo stuff. You just have to have a blow-through carburetor to be able to do it. It's unfortunate the $100 M90 needs a $900 lower intake to make it work. I feel a truck intake and a budget turbo is more bang for the buck. Nobody's arguing that there are different ways to do it. What we're trying to find out is M90 information right now. That, well, not now, not always, but with that test, that's what we're trying to find out. We're not trying to find out if that's the best way or the least expensive way. That's not really a comparison. You would just put a turbo on it. It's like Ford knew they were going down the air-to-air intercooler. I think that they did probably from the beginning. And I think that that's a better idea because Dean, what is the boost level? What's the factory boost level on a Super Coupe? Are you ever going to do an all-out power run with a 3800 V6 turbo? Yeah, we're going to do a big bang on one of those. Inlet air temperature at 130 after air to water at 20 psi. That's good. That's a good temperature. Did you ever get to test the Janus Knox controller? I did not. Thought it was 9 psi, but I'll check. That's higher than the 3800 stuff. This guy's trying to cheat it up with more boost. Actually, it's better. Followed and watch your videos. That's why I'm happy I got here live now. About tuning. Do you have a video on the best way to tune? I don't have any really specific tuning videos. I have some stuff that show you what the change in power is when you do different things to the tune. So when you run the timing that you're supposed to, and then when you run less than that, it shows you how much power it takes away. And then when you run the airfield that you're supposed to, or that you make it richer, it shows what happens. I don't normally go leaner because that's how you break stuff. And I don't normally go too much timing because, again, that's how you break stuff. How often do you do your weekend trips or however long to West Tech? It depends on the dyno schedule. Think about doing EFI on my 440 Winnebago for cam heads and then eventually turbo build. Have you asked how much Joker charges to port the M90s yet? I haven't. I think a lot of stuff that we're getting into now with the M90 is stuff that I'm not going to recommend. I mean, why would you do this? Like, why would you go to this level unless you're just one of the guys that wanted to be the guy that made the most power that anybody's ever made out of an M90? So you could say that. So you could be that guy. And that's, dude, I salute that. I think that that's awesome. Like it has been said before, it makes no sense. And you could easily just put any, like a GT45 turbo on there for 100 or 200 bucks or whatever. It would just smash this thing in terms of power and for less money. But that's not the consideration here. The consideration here is, okay, I want to climb Mount Everest, but I want to do it backwards. Okay, that's not the best way, but it'll certainly be hard to do. So if that's your thing and you want to try it, then hey, I salute that. Like they see an L2, L20. Why would the other versions be different? Would a twin screw be better at higher boost levels? Yeah, a twin screw would be way better than a roots blower, especially at higher boost levels. Rusty cold beverage. Max Wedge dual quad crazy long runner intakes are $1,500 on eBay. Yeah, Shadow Ops. I can't run VVT on the engine dyno, not on the Gen 3 and 4 stuff. 11 to 12 is stock Super Coupe T-Bird 3.8 liters. Wow, I'm surprised. What else is holding them back then from making the power? Do they have really small cams in them, or do they have really bad head flow? Like, what's the other limitation on the Ford deal? Because at 12 pounds, they should make 50% more power than, not 50%, but they should make a good percentage increase in power over something that's running 7 or 8 pounds. Slow Fiero, I'm guessing it. Well, it's running 11s. Obviously, it's not slow. We're from 1170s to 1140s, adding an intercooler to the Supercharged 3800. Same pulley, but a bit more timing with intercooler with cooler inlet airs. So you change the timing too. So that's the thing. I don't want to do that. We know that timing can help. Although in this case, I don't know that timing is going to, because we added timing until it didn't make any more power when we added more timing. I think it at 500 crank on a ported M90, intercooled on 93, maybe 530 on E85. Yeah, I won't try to do it on pump gas anymore. We'll definitely stay with E85 because we know that's worth power. There are a lot of other things I could try, but I was just wondering about the intercooler itself, just all by itself. There's lots of other things that we'd want to do. One of the things I'm definitely going to do, even if I were to do because the next steps I want to do are dramatic. So it's ported and 105 millimeter, like max effort M90 kind of thing. But before I do that, I think I want to just put an LS 78 millimeter throttle body on there and maybe just do a little port match, Super Richie port match on the inlet and the flange and I only want to do it really to make it easier to plug in the harness and stuff. If I can have the IAC and the TPS on the, which we don't have on the drive-by-wire throttle body that came factory on there, if I can plug that in using the Holley harness on an LS, it just makes life easier. My life. We're happy to help. There's a lot of sharp guys here, and they'll always help with all of your questions, man. We like it when new guys get involved in the industry. It's definitely helpful. They pegged the cam duration back. They repositioned the injectors, and the EEC4 was very conservatively boosted due to temperature. It was limited due to the 5-speed Mazda center hole punch clutch. So the 5-speed was not strong enough. But what in the motor was limiting power? Was it the tune? Was it the heads? Was it the mild camshaft? LS or big block olds. What should I do with it? I myself, well, if you're going to drive it every day, I think I honestly would put an LS in it. If it's not something you're going to drive every day, I'd put something different in it, like an Oldsmobile would be cool. Got any tricks to lube the rear bearing in the housing? We just put new grease in it when we did the last ones that we did. But you want to try to feed it oil or something, or are you trying to spin it really fast? Because that's what probably should look at better bearings, maybe. What is let's see here. I'm gonna have to look this up. an L35 LT just got? Are you talking about the L35 396 or the L35 V6? I'm guessing a V6, right? This might be old news, I'm thinking, but I saw the World Products Frankenstein small book Chevy that was modified to fit the LS style heads and intake. Yeah, they did a hybrid block version that was an LS on top, but it had the small block Chevy style bottom end, so that they didn't have to worry about communication tunnels on the what is essentially kind of a Y block. So, Dean, you think it's the cam? Seems like all those old engines are hard to come by unless you find an old jet boat. Yeah. Have you ever supercharged or twin turboed a 427 Windsor stroker with CHI heads? I haven't done that specific thing, no. But it's not any different than doing it to anything like a 427 or any motor with any side with any other cylinder head either. Whatever the thing makes NA with those heads, it will make it will multiply that with boost. I have a Cam Dallas one with ported and milled heads and fast intake. Been running set for 15 years. I'm going to be rebuilding a turbo 6-liter. I wanted to say thank you. Dude, it sounds like you got a good combination, man. Super Richie's the boss's alter ego. And he's awesome. He gets to be awesome while I get to take the brunt of all the comments. Off topic, but I found a new GT500 122 blower. I'm getting it tomorrow. Awesome. I'm all in. What size pulley would I need for 8 PSI on Cathedral Port 5.3? Try not to go crazy right out of the gate. I don't know. What crank pulley are you using, and what is the pulley that's on there right now? And what is your 5.3? Is your Cathedral 5.3 a bone stock one? Does it have a big cam in it? Some intake? Does it have ported heads? All of that's going to matter on how much pressure it's going to make with any given pulley combination. No brakes. Your 440 should be with boost should easily be able to make 600 foot-pounds. The most surprising dyno test was the original Big Bang motor, I think. Well, a good, healthy self-image won't hurt you. Yeah. I just have to split myself into different personalities to be able to pull that off. Say the Roush variant is intercooled and capable of 8 to 10 pounds. Guys have reported intake temps can be an issue after a couple pulls and cause timing to be pulled. So I'm thinking the Eden version is probably producing higher intake air temps than the Roush variant does. Speaking of blowers, have you ever had your hands on a Super Coupe? I found 2 of them one time in a wrecking yard, but I didn't grab the blowers. For now, stock LS pulley, stock heads. I have a 230-ish blower type cam. Still undecided on that. The only thing I can tell you is which stock LS pulley is it? Because they're different ones. There's a truck pulley, there's an F-body pulley, there's a Corvette pulley, there's LS9 pulley. There's all kinds of different pulleys. So is it was it a 5.3 that you said? 5.3 is going to be a truck pulley, I'm thinking. That's actually pretty big. So if you have that blower, it probably doesn't have a removable pulley on it unless you have the puller to take those on and off. So you need a pretty big pulley on there. or a smaller crank pulley. Just found that in Europe. Increase 20 horsepower, 276, 268. It's a reverse pattern cam. Dana, a 383 is always going to make more power than what you have, which is going to be a 350. I'm assuming that that's not a 305, right? It has a small pulley on it now. So does it have an aftermarket pulley on it, or does it have a stock pulley on it? On saying that, we discussed Dave's MN12 SC 3800. Lots of durability upgrades and design differences in the Supercharged 3.8 versus the non-Supercharged one. Yeah, I was more interested in why it only makes the power that it makes, given that boost level, because it seems pretty low. So I was wondering what was holding it back. Of BTR Truck Norris 4.8 with a Trailblazer SS. Dustin, I don't know what you mean by my thoughts on that combination. Southern aftermarket bolt-on type. Yeah, so find out what blower pulley that is. I mean, you could obviously press. I don't know if it has a pressed-on hub or how they've done it, or if it's a completely different snout. I don't remember how they did it on the GT500 stuff. But you should go with a bigger pulley. it'd be way better to start out with, hey, look, this thing's only making 6 pounds or whatever, and go, well, I could put a smaller pulley on it, rather than, oh yeah, this is like 15, like right off the bat. I have a 94 Cobra. Will a comp 274 cam work with a stock long block? Want to do a cam and intake only? Yeah, that cam should fit on a stock long block. I want to see a comparison of a mass versus CID big single plane intake manifold on L3s. I've tested the mass, but not the CID. I think Brian tested a CID intake manifold. Why would the Ford 3.8 be so weak compared to the GM one? I don't know. That's what I'm trying to find out. I just would like to look at the spec sheet and see what is the compression on both of them, what is the head flow on both of them, what is the cam timing. I'm leaning toward that, but I don't know for sure. The intake manifold should kind of be a wash. One of them, they both have the same blowers. They both have big enough inlets for their respective power outputs. One of them has an intercooler and doesn't, and the one with the intercooler has more boost. So in my mind, that should make more power, unless it has a tiny little camshaft or heads that are not very good. Thought cam was a 205. I don't think that a 3800 cam is very big. Where can I buy a wrong cam shirt? I know I need to get those available. Head flow on the Ford is much higher, but it has very little lift. Oh, the cam has little lift. How much power is a 6.2 versus a 6.0 square port? Is it good for everything else being the same? So how much power do you gain going from a 6.0 to a 6.2? If you don't change anything, if you keep the compression the same and everything, it's pretty easy to multiply out. So if we theorize that we keep the specific output the same, which you probably don't do, you probably would decrease the specific output on a 6.2. So let's do this. It'd be, if you kept the specific output the same, it'd be 18 horsepower. Just by changing that displacement. The emphasis on the larger board giving you that little bit more head flow. I don't think that actually happens on that combination, because on a rec port headed 6.2 or 6.0, you have about 35 or 40% more head flow than you need for either one of those. So neither one of those is strangled by head flow. They both have way more than they need. That neither one of those motors can keep up with the cylinder heads as it is. You should do a 3/4 turbo cam t-shirt. Are number 7 pistons in LS engine prone to failure? I've had 2 different engines with number 7 piston failure. One broken ringland, other melted piston, turbo 5.3 with a blow through carb, single plane, 10 to 12 pounds. I don't think that that's the piston's fault. Are you thinking that it's a distribution problem? It's a tune problem, obviously. Because there's not the number 7 piston isn't any different than all the other pistons. So it's not a piston failure. It's a tune failure. Mopar, it's an easy calculation. Just take your power output and divide it by your displacement and then multiply it by the new displacement. And it's really easy to get. You can see what the change is. A little bit off topic, but have you ever considered combining the Super Richie dual plenum intake with an 8,000 RPM D-stroke 6.2? So are you talking about the one that I did for the LS? And then why would you want to de-stroke it? That would be my question. Because we could run 8,000 RPM with a 6.2. You could do that with a 7-liter also. It doesn't have to have a short stroke in it to run to 8,000 RPM. And then we'd have to configure it to be a fairly short runner intake manifold. Lucky for us, that intake manifold is adjustable. On my 351 Windsor van project, AFR 185s come with either a 190 or a 202 intake valve, but the 202 won't fit stock pistons without notching. I have to have larger valves, so it may open up ring gap as well. So are you going to put valve reliefs in there? Thunderbird Super Coupe is 8-to-1 compression. That's what a 3800 is. Almost all of those factory forced induction ones were fairly low compression. But that's good, though. It gives you lots of leeway. Should do battle of the 3800s. GM, Ford, and Chrysler. Chrysler didn't have a supercharged or turbocharged 3800 though, right? Or a 3.8 liter. Have you ever done your own sloppy valve release? Yes, many, many times. I did it on the Big Bang 351. I did it poorly on the Big Bang 351, but yeah, I've done it with the right way to do it is to take the pistons out and have them machined on a mill. The second nicest way to do it is to use that Isky valve cutter, which we did on the Cobra Jet when we went from Cobra Jet to Super Cobra Jet. So we put valve reliefs in it because the valves are in a different location and we needed different valve reliefs. And then we did it again then re-notched them again when we put some other kind of valve, either another Kazi head or an airflow research head or something else. And I did it on the 351, and I've done it on a small block Chevy. I don't know that I've ever done it on an LS, but I've done it to where I just take a Dremel and just do a sweep with the Dremel. Is the other way to do it, and not the way I recommend. Yeah, the cutting for the valve release isn't the big deal. Just making sure that you get all the material out of there. Do you ever go to SEMA or PRI? Yeah, I've been to SEMA many, many times. I've been to PRI a couple of times. I'd like to go to PRI again this year because the last time I went, it was in Florida. Heads on 3800 Ford had poor flow considering when Ford went to the split port heads made the same power as the supercharged heads did. Doing a 6-liter square port with heads milled 100 and a way too big cam and a 2,400-pound car. You're going to mill factory heads 100 thousandths? Is there that much deck thickness? That's a lot. So you're going to have to do something to the intake too, because that's not going to line up anymore. Well, so now you have small chambers, then you have enough head flow that should work good. I'm new to the M90, got my hands on a 98 Riv, and I heard it can get 400 out of it. That supercharger will make 400. I mean, we made almost 500 at the Flywheel with one. So that supercharger will definitely do it. A 98 has the earlier blower, so it's not quite as good as the Gen 5 blower. But getting 400 out of it will take a camshaft also. A camshaft and boost. I was talking about the 4.8 crank. I know I know which one you're talking about. I know you're talking about with the D-stroke deal, the 4.8 crank and the L3 block. I know, I understand that. But what I'm saying is you don't need to D-stroke the motor to run it to 8,000. All of the other motors will run to 8,000. Plastic intake flexes and still bolts on. Intake runners may be a hair off. Yeah. Yeah. There better be quotes on that. There'd be air quotes on that. Even after you go past 30, getting the ports to line up and getting the bolt holes to line up can be problematic. You got to drill them out at the very least. And then on some intake manifolds, you got to be worried about the valley cover and the bolts, and that's a lot of stuff. You put a thinner one on there, though. It's not a big deal. Oh, Kevin, the Chrysler one was NA. You didn't want to leave them out in the cold because L3 has metal tubes you can remove. Use the angle mill the 23-degree heads down to 18 degrees. So what? 1/8 of an inch off of one side. Yep. But then you also had to mill the intake manifold too, right? Like Ford, since gas prices high lately, at what point is the 5-liter a better option than the 3.5 EcoBoost? Are you talking about which one of those gets better fuel mileage? I see you use a Holly HP computer a lot. As far as I can tell, are the popular self-learning EFI systems worth owning? I wouldn't. If you're building a performance motor, if you're building a stock one, you really could do this with a stock computer and a stock harness, and then go visit Matt at Sloppy Mechanics. He has tunes in his cabinets that they'll just give you for free, and you can just load them up. So if you have a motor that has the Sloppy Stage 2 camshaft and springs and headers on it and whatever, and 80-pound injectors, he already has a program for it. You just buy the program, put it in, it just works. That's one way to do it. If you're doing it carbureted, then that's a different thing. The 3.8 supercharged engine heads had hidden injector inlets. Heads are rather like the 351 Cleveland 2V ports. They're reprofiled. Stan Weiss has flow figures. It's a low lift roller cam engine. The old Thunderbird Super Coupe ran its blower like a centripetal supercharger. You mean that it was remote mounted? Is that what you're talking about? How much power do the NA 3800s make? Like 190. Crazy how 7 pounds only adds 50 to 60. The NA ones were rated at 200, but that's because they had higher compression and different heads and a different camshaft and a different intake manifold. Although the camshaft might have been the same. Somebody can let me know about that. But they had a lot of other changes that would have changed the NA power output. The compression would have been a fairly decent thing, and the intake manifold definitely would have helped. It might not have changed peak power dramatically, but it definitely would have changed average power. We saw that in the testing that I did where we ran the different longer runner intakes. I guess I want to see the adjustable manifold run on a higher RPM motor than it has been so far compared to stuff like the high ram or the BTR. Pulley ECU has a function where you can math horsepower on a data log. If you know the brake-specific fuel consumption, what numbers for the brake-specific do you see on the 600 horsepower LS typically? I don't know. I don't normally look at brake-specific fuel consumption because I don't care about it. I'm not trying to get fuel mileage at wide open throttle. But brake-specific numbers for an LS would probably be in the mid 4s. Cam is the same. Okay. I need payload capacity for lumber work and a decent mile per gallon rating. I don't plan on towing heavier than 6,000 pounds. What would be the best option between a 3.5 EcoBoost and a 5-liter? I don't know. I've never tested either one of those for fuel mileage, and we don't normally do that on the engine dyno. I would kind of think under cruise that the smaller motor would, but the 5-liter is going to have more compression, so it has variable cam also, so it might do well. I'd have to look at the rated fuel mileages for those. That's what I was thinking. 45 or so for the NALS engine, probably closer to 55 to 60 to be safer with the blower turbo. That's kind of normally where we are on the LS stuff. We've had good LS motors be like 4.3 or so. We could probably nitpick it. I mean, we're not trying to get, we're trying to make it safe and not trying to make it kind of safe and use very little fuel. If we were building an endurance motor, we would look into that stuff. And you guys probably did, Dan, right? I mean, didn't you guys for a cup motor or something, you definitely would look at that. Like the idea of a remote mount Whipple. Yeah, the reason that I like that is because that way you can incorporate an intercooler in it. And the old 8.1s, I think, were like that. L67 had 293 gears, and L36 had either 305 or 329 final drives. So different final drive in the transmission. Is there a general timing target you go for on a turbo LS setup on pump gas? Was that 15 on 10 to 12 pounds on the run that melted the piston? Which was obviously too much for my setup. Yeah, what was the air fuel? Eric's out. Some of our NASCAR stuff was in the high 3s. Yeah, you were looking for fuel mileage. And then if you build the motor accordingly, where it will take that sort of leanish mixture. The goal for my M90 Mustang stick car I've been building was to make 500 wheel horsepower. L32 had 329. So an L32 would be much better than, right? That thing would accelerate a lot better. I'm finding out about a Phytech EFI on an Oldsmobile 455 so far. One time I did put a 3.8 supercharged Thunderbird engine into a Mercury Capri. What year was the Capri? Was it the later Fox chassis ones, or was it the early 70s ones? Watch your remote mount turbo. Do you feel lag versus length of turbo of tube relationship is linear or exponential? I don't know. I don't think you can extrapolate one or the other of those things. I don't ever do that. I just look at the data and then retest it and then look at the data. It would be nice if it was math based like that, but I don't think that it is. Talk to the Phytech guys at SEMA. They seem like decent guys. I was considering using the TPI setup. Okay. I haven't done any testing with any of their stuff. The guys at Westech have. Eric and Ish. I've tuned the CSU blow through carb to 11.5 to 1. That's good for boost. I don't have any data logging, so it's hard to say what it was specifically on that run that melted the piston. Well, the thing that you need to be concerned with is not so much what you need is more data. So if you're looking at 11.5 to 1, are you looking at 11.5 to 1 on one side through one header? What is it on the other side? And then, as we've shown many, many times, so we're looking at our pole, but what is it in each individual cylinder? So if it's 11.5, it's got to be 11.5, or it could not be 11.5 on any of them. It could be you're averaging 11.5 if you're getting it on one side. So you're averaging 11.5 for those four holes. Well, if one of those is 9 to 1, one of them is 13 or more. So you have to look at that. And the only way to do that is to get individual O2s. And you don't have to run 8 of them, as I've recommended before. You can put O2 sensor bungs in all the individual cylinders, all the individual pipes, and then you could see what it is in that hole and make a pull, run that hole, put it in another one, make a pull, and then you could just write it down or log it on a chassis dyno, however, and then you could figure out, oh, look, here's why that one's burning down, because that one's 13.5 or 14 or 15. So we're going to go close out our poll. 87% are saying if I add an intercooler, it is going to add power. I like that. I'm liking that. The GM3800 is 155 to 178 CFM head at 500 lift. The Supercharger 3800 170 CFM. So comparable then if one of them actually is 178. Renault Clio 2-liter 16 valve 172 182. That's the engine name in Europe. Biggest thorn in my side when trying to modify my TPI has been trying to tune it using 80s electronics. It is kind of slow. Friend of mine asked how much it took to drive his car down the road at 60 miles an hour. I asked what the mileage was at 60 miles an hour. I did the math in my head and spit out the horsepower number. Nice. Opinion on an M90 on a hypothetical Lima 2.3. It will work just fine. And then you mount the blower. You know, it would be drawing the carburetor fuel into the blower and then blowing into the manifold. That would work fine. What do we figure added the 20 horsepower between the Gen 3 and the Gen 5? I don't know which one of those things it is. The blower is definitely different. It's definitely better. It has a bigger inlet. It has a bigger intake manifold. So all of that. And different cylinder heads. But I don't think the cylinder head valve size probably changed things that much. Is there going to fix other than individual cylinder injectors to cylinder distribution problems with the carb or TBI? You might be able to change things in the intake manifold by porting or putting vanes or something in there to change distribution. Yeah, Bryce, that's one of the things that we do on carbureted stuff is sometimes you have to do that. You have to tune it for the leanest cylinder and you have to make sure that one's safe. Sometimes you could do that with corner jetting, though not always. Sometimes that helps. Sometimes you can go in and a guy that has had experience in this can do some porting and try to either enhance the others or make that one flow less, which you can do also. Anyone have any experience with an AXE 46080 blower from John Deere? I've never even heard of them. Just got here. What's up with the Omni? I need to go pick it up. I know it has new tires on it. It just needs the AC. And I think that Ben was working on that. Good to see everybody. Richard, when will you test a UZ or Toyota? I don't know. That's pretty far down the list of things I got to get done. On else engines running a turbo, do you prefer intercoolers that run underneath the intake or standalone intercoolers mounted to the car? The one that we run is not in the intake manifold. I have run that before, and with the way that we run it on the dyno, it doesn't really make any difference because it doesn't get heated up or anything. It probably does in the car, but for drag racing, it works fine. I would say there's less of an issue with where that intercooler is than what size you're trying to, what size the core is and what the intercooler like water flow is and those sorts of things compared to how much power you're trying to make and what the flow rate is of the turbos and things that you're trying to blow through that's much more critical, I think, than having it there versus having it, an air to water mounted somewhere else. The one thing you can do is if it's remote mounted and not under that lid, like on a Holley Hiram or whatever, it can be much bigger. So if you're trying to force a lot of airflow, which that's going to be a restriction, and a lot of boost, which the core size ultimately, for any core size, there's a limit to how much heat rejection it can have and flow it can have that it can deal with. So you can have bigger intercoolers, and then you can have, ice water setups from that kind of stuff for drag racing. With GM 3800, the port EFI meant virtually no cylinder distribution. Well, but didn't the Ford have port injection also? Richard, do you think the M90 setup would work on a Holley low ram? It bolts on, at least my plate bolts on exactly the same way. The thing that I don't know is if that blower, if the mounting ears on that blower will fit down in past the fuel rails on the low ram. I need to measure that. Have you ever tried an AC cooled air to water? I have not. We have tried ice water a lot, but not the AC thing. Richard wondering about heat issues. What heat issues are you talking about? We got 1 more minute. Quick, get your question in. Saturday night. Should I go the single or double chain 6.2 LS? We always run single chains. Just put the good German chain on there and it's fine. And if you run a double chain, you got to change a bunch of stuff. 900 horsepower, that core is more than sufficient. I think the M90 setup works on a LQ9. Right now we're at a near 500 horsepower, so I think we're going to get more ultimately, but I think that this blower is probably a little on the small side for us for a cam 6-liter, which is already going to be near 600, already going to be near 500 horsepower. I think you end up just not running very much boost that way. And that note, it is time to go. Thank you all for showing up. I'm going to try to work on the video and get that up the Flywheel versus flex plate, which is really cool. And then the 3800 versus the 4.8 liter with the tiny little 2.6 pulley. I think that they also make a 2.5, which would spin it a little bit faster, but I could also, rather than going down in pulleys in blower pulley size, I'd actually like to go up in crank pulley size. And I think that ATI has a bigger pulley for the LS, a bigger pulley assembly, which I want to key this thing anyways. I think that they have a bigger crank pulley than the, and I'd like to do that rather than put a smaller blower pulley on it, because you start getting into problems with belt slippage when you get too tiny on the blower pulley. And if you go up in crank pulley size, it helps. And especially if I'm going to figure out a way, which I think I'm going to not drive any of the other pulleys, which would be, wind talker. I like that. That's good. And yes, we're going to do a big bang on the 3800. And on that note, it is time to go, 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 go. First watch them go, go, go.